Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. Part 19, the Spatial Tower, Infinite Shape Nuance. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, the single cyclic movement from which all reality unfolds. When phi differentiates, that one movement generates its first derivatives, and with them the three dimensions appear at once. Time as omega, space as k, and motion as v. From that first differentiation upward, every higher derivative is an echo of the one below it, an infinite ascent of finer and finer reflections of phi's original movement. And because the dimensions are born from that first echo, time, space, and motion also reverberate into infinity, carrying phi's unfolding into ever deeper rhythms, structures, and flows. Thus the entire universe, every law, every pattern, every force, every particle, every phenomenon, is nothing but phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. All of existence is the infinite echo of one field. Today, we listen to just one of those echoes. In our last journey, we climbed. We ascended the infinite staircase of the Temporal Tower, learning to hear the universe's rhythms, from the steady pulse of a star to the complex cadence of a thought. We discovered that time has an infinite grammar of becoming. Today, we turn our gaze from the ear to the eye, from the when to the where, from the rhythms of time to the shapes of space. We stand before the second great pillar of the holophase language, the Spatial Tower. If the Temporal Tower is the infinite grammar of becoming, the Spatial Tower is the infinite grammar of being together. It is the architecture of coexistence, the syntax of form, the dictionary of all possible shapes. Let us briefly recall our ascent through episode 7. We began by seeing the entire master tree as one living language. We learned its core alphabet, phi, omega, k, dphi, v. Then explored the nuance block of second derivatives, where texture emerges. We entered the realm of higher-order semantics, understanding complexity growth and envelope evolution. Just now, we climbed the temporal tower to see the full structure of time's grammar. Now we perform the symmetrical, essential climb. We ascend the spatial tower. This is not a detour, it is the completion of a duality. Time and space are the two primary witnesses of phi's unfolding. To see the complete language, we must understand both infinite pillars. Today, we learn to read the shapes of the world. First, imagine the tower before us, from texture to topography. Imagine next to the temporal tower its majestic twin. This tower is not built of rhythms, but of gradients. Not of frequencies, but of wavelengths. Its foundation is also rooted in phi, but its ground floor is k, the spatial frequency, the wave number. K answers, how tightly is phi wound in space? How quickly does its phase change as we move? A high K means rapid variation, fine texture. A low K means gentle variation, broad landscape. But again, a single floor cannot hold the complexity of form. We enter the elevator. On the first floor, we find the spatial gradient, often denoted A. This is the change of K. If K is how wavy, the gradient tells us how that waviness itself changes across space. Are the waves getting closer together or farther apart? On the second floor, we encounter curvature, the change of the gradient. This is where shape truly begins. Is the landscape flat, sloping, or bowl-shaped? Curvature quantifies the bending of space's texture. On the third floor, we find the change of curvature, which tells us how the bending itself bends. This defines intricate features, the sharpness of a ridge, the smoothness of a valley's transition. Above this, the floors ascend forever, higher and higher spatial derivatives, each controlling finer aspects of edges, corners, texture, and microscopic form. This is the spatial tower. It is the infinite grammar of arrangement. It takes the raw fact of spatial variation K and refines it into the full story of how things are arranged, smoothly or sharply, fractally or simply, elegantly or chaotically. Linguistically, if K is the noun of space, a wave, then the gradient is a prepositional phrase, a wave with spacing that changes. Curvature is a relative clause, a wave that bends into a focus. And higher derivatives are the descriptive details that specify the exact quality of that bend, that edge, or that texture. In the Holophase language, the spatial tower is the dedicated wing for all predicates of spatial structure. It is the shape library. Within this library, K is the catalog of basic textures: coarse, medium, fine. The gradient and curvature are the manuals for architecture and geometry: slopes, lenses, orbits, containers. The higher spatial derivatives are the detailed blueprints for intricate craftsmanship: the filigree on metal, the roughness of bark, the specific pattern of a fingerprint. This tower's role is to encode everything about the here and the how arranged and the how that arrangement varies of any pattern. It answers, what is the local texture? Is it focusing or spreading? Is it smooth or jagged? Is it twisted or aligned? Its position in the master tree is perfectly symmetrical to the temporal tower. It is a vertical column rooted directly in phi, where every derivative is a pure space derivative. First derivative with respect to position, second derivative, third derivative, and so on, all applied to phi. It is space's own pure voice. Operationally, climbing the spatial tower means measuring higher and higher spatial derivatives of a field or pattern. To make this more tangible, we turn to vision, our primary spatial sense. Look at a simple object, a perfectly round, polished marble. Observe its edge. The brightness changes from light to dark across the boundary. The rate of that change is related to K, the spatial frequency of the edge. But the edge of a marble is a smooth, continuous curve. To describe that curveness, you need more. The gradient of brightness changes direction along the edge, and the rate of that direction change is the curvature. For a perfect circle, this curvature is constant. The derivative of that curvature around the circle is zero. It is perfectly smooth, with no bumps. Now look at a complex object, a craggy, weathered mountain peak. Its silhouette is not smooth. It has jagged edges, overhangs, and ridges. The K is high and varies wildly. There are fine details everywhere. The gradient changes abruptly, giving sharp cliffs. The curvature is not constant. It is positive on bumps, negative in hollows, and changes rapidly. To capture the precise, rugged character of that peak, what makes it distinct from a smooth hill or a shattered rock, you need higher spatial derivatives. They capture the jaggedness, the fractal roughness. The spatial tower provides the vocabulary for this entire spectrum. Low floor phenomena, governed by K and perhaps gradient, include perfect crystals, gentle hills, simple wavefronts, and uniform textures. Mid-floor phenomena, requiring curvature and its change, include lenses, orbital paths, heart-shaped leaves, animal silhouettes, and architectural arches. High-floor phenomena, dense with higher derivatives, include fractal coastlines, cloud textures, dendritic crystal growth, the intricate pore structure of a bone, and turbulent flow patterns. The scientific essence is, the spatial tower quantifies the texture and form of phi's arrangement in space. It answers whether space is flat or warped, whether patterns are sharp or blurry, whether boundaries are smooth or fractal. The answers live on different floors. The mathematical techniques of extracting these spatial derivatives from images, fields, and materials, the formal climb up this tower, live in the technical holophase work. But conceptually, they all reflect this same idea. The spatial tower is the ordered list of how shape changes as you move through space. The spatial tower, while purely about arrangement, fundamentally shapes how patterns unfold in time and how they move. In its home dimension, space, it manifests directly as texture, slope, shape, and detail. Texture, set by K, distinguishes fine sand from coarse gravel. Slope and gradient, the first derivatives, describe a hillside or the concentration gradient of perfume in a room. Shape and curvature, the second derivatives, describe the lens of an eye, the parabolic dish of a satellite, or the dome of a capital. Detail and roughness, captured by higher derivatives, describe the prickliness of a cactus, the swirl in marble, and the cellular structure of a leaf. But spatial structure also dictates temporal destiny. In heat diffusion, a sharp spatial gradient, a steep temperature difference, causes a fast temporal change, rapid heat flow, high omega in the temperature field. The spatial tower, through its gradients, drives the temporal tower through its rates of change. In ecology, the spatial arrangement of resources, a gradient of nutrients, shapes the temporal dynamics of population growth and migration. A smooth gradient leads to steady expansion. A patchy, high derivative landscape leads to boom-bust cycles and complex population waves. In neurology, the spatial pattern of neural connections, the connectome, a high-dimensional shape, determines the possible temporal patterns of brain activity, the rhythms, seizures, and thoughts that can emerge. Motion, too, is deeply influenced by the spatial tower, because motion happens through space. The shape of space dictates the nature of motion. K influences the wavelength of a moving wave. The gradient creates forces. A ball rolls down a slope, which is the spatial gradient of height because of gravity. The gradient is the potential for motion. Curvature guides trajectories. Planets orbit due to the curvature of spacetime around a star. Light bends around the lens due to spatial curvature of the refractive index. The path of a river is guided by the curvature of the land. Higher spatial derivatives create complex, winding paths. The chaotic motion of a molecule in a turbulent fluid is driven by the extremely complex, high-derivative spatial structure of the flow field. In this sense, the spatial tower is the architect of the stage upon which time and motion perform. It builds the landscapes that rhythms must traverse and that movements must obey. In our episode 7 map, we are continuing our vertical integration within chapter 4, Higher-Order Semantics. The spatial tower is the second great vertical pillar. It stands in beautiful symmetry with the temporal tower, rooted at the same phi, with K as its first major floor, ascending through gradient, curvature, and into the infinite canopy of form. Together with the temporal tower, it forms the dual foundation upon which the mixed tower of propagation and all wave semantics are built. This climb is crucial. We are assembling the complete language. We now understand the infinite grammar of one dimension, time, and we are acquiring the infinite grammar of its sibling dimension, space. With both, we can begin to read the full sentences of reality that intertwine them. The spatial tower is also in constant collaboration with neighboring branches. It is the primary consultant for any branch dealing with form. With the temporal tower, it participates in a core dialogue. Through dispersion relations, a spatial pattern K is assigned a temporal rhythm omega. The spatial tower provides the K and its stability, which dictates possible values of omega. A change in spatial curvature can force a change in temporal frequency. With the mixed derivatives tower, the collaboration is explicit. Terms like the spatial gradient of omega or the time derivative of K are the handshakes between the pillars. The spatial tower's derivatives are essential ingredients in that mixed tower. With topological semantics, the partnership is deep. Topology is about global, qualitative shape that cannot be smoothed away. Knots, windings, and defects. The spatial tower describes the local, quantitative shape. A vortex, a topological defect, has a specific spatial derivative fingerprint, a characteristic curl and gradient pattern around its core. The topology provides the global constraint, the "you must go around this hole," while the spatial tower describes the detailed field that satisfies that constraint. With wave semantics, the spatial tower provides the K and all its derivatives that govern diffraction, focusing, and interference. The bending of waves around corners, diffraction, depends on higher spatial derivatives of the wavefront. With quadratic and balance semantics, terms like the squared magnitude of K represent spatial activity or strain energy. Balancing this with temporal activity, often written in terms of omega squared, leads to fundamental laws like the wave equation. The semantic meaning of the spatial tower is that it is the dimension of configuration. While time is unfolding, space is co-placement. The spatial tower encodes how things are placed together. It answers not just what is there, But how is it arranged? It tells us whether things are near or far, aligned or scattered, smooth or rough, open or enclosed, flat or curved. These questions are governed by wavelength, gradients, curvature, convergence, divergence, and higher derivatives. This tower allows the universe to express structure: stable, repeating K; flow, continuous gradients; focus, positive curvature; spread, negative curvature; complexity, rich higher derivatives; and beauty, specific harmonious relationships between derivatives, as in a seashell or a flower. In the full language, it is the syntax of presence. It turns a featureless void into a landscape of mountains, rivers, crystals, and organisms. Patterns with low, constant spatial derivatives are typically stable and low energy. A flat plane, a perfect crystal lattice, a soap bubble that minimizes curvature. These are examples of low-floor spatial configurations. Patterns with extremely high, irregular derivatives, jagged fractal shapes, often represent metastable or high-energy states, like a shattered glass, a lightning bolt's path, or a turbulent interface. They are poised to decay into simpler forms. The tower's variability spans the entire catalog of creation. Geological shapes range from smooth plains with low derivatives to rolling hills with moderate curvature, to fractal mountain ranges and coastlines with high derivatives. Biological shapes range from spherical cells with constant curvature to branching lungs and trees with complex gradients and curvature changes, to intricate patterns on shells and wings that arise from programmed higher derivative relationships. Human-made shapes range from the straight line of a road with zero curvature to the circular wheel with constant curvature, to the Gothic arch with elegantly varying curvature, to the chaotic scribble with high random derivatives. The spatial tower's claim is that the spatial structure of any physical field can be described by a series of spatial derivatives of an underlying phi. To test this, take any image or spatial dataset: a satellite photo, a microscope image of a cell, a map of magnetic fields. First, analyze it with a low-order model, describing its features using only average K and perhaps gradient. See how well you can reconstruct it. Then, analyze it with a higher-order model, using a description that includes curvature, its derivative, and higher terms. Reconstruct again. Compare the two reconstructions. If the higher-order description captures significantly more detail, the sharpness of edges, the texture, the specific curvature of features, then the improvement is a measure of the pattern's spatial semantic density. Falsification would occur if a fundamental physical field revealed spatial features, such as a perfectly sharp corner in an electric field, that require an infinite or non-convergent series of spatial derivatives to describe, violating the assumption of a smooth, analytic phi underlying reality. The techniques for this spatial analysis are part of the Holophase toolkit. The spatial tower's handiwork is everything we see. In physics and cosmology, spacetime itself is modeled as a field whose curvature is central. General relativity tells us that mass and energy tell spacetime how to curve. This curvature is a second-order spatial and temporal derivative of the metric field, a direct expression from the high floors of the spatial tower of spacetime. Crystal lattices provide another example. The perfect repeating arrangement of atoms is a manifestation of a dominant stable K, the lattice vector. Defects in crystals, dislocations, and vacancies are disruptions in this gradient and curvature field. Lightning and river networks are branching fractal patterns that arise as nature explores a vast range of spatial derivatives. They are paths of least resistance that create incredibly complex, high-derivative spatial structures. In chemistry, molecular shapes are direct expressions of spatial derivatives of the electron cloud, phi. The three-dimensional structure of a molecule, its bonds, angles, and torsions, is a map of spatial derivatives. A carbon tetrahedron has one curvature pattern. A benzene ring has another. Reaction diffusion patterns, such as Turing patterns that give spots on a leopard or stripes on a zebrafish, emerge from a precise balance between diffusion, a spatial second derivative, and reaction rates. The resulting pattern is a sentence written in the lexicon of spatial curvature. In biology, morphogenesis, the process by which a ball of cells becomes a shape with a head, tail, and limbs, is driven by chemical gradients that trigger genes, leading to changes in cell curvature and adhesion, crafting tissues and organs with complex higher derivative structures. Leaf venation and lung branching are optimal transport networks. Their specific branching angles and thicknesses solve equations that minimize energy, which are fundamentally equations about the spatial derivatives of flow and pressure. In human physiology, the brain's folds are a striking example. The cerebral cortex is a sheet crumpled into a highly complex, high curvature shape to fit within the skull. The pattern of gyri and sulci is not random. It reflects tension and growth gradients during development, a masterpiece of spatial derivative engineering. The vascular network, your capillary system, forms a space-filling, fractal-like network that ensures every cell is near a blood supply. This is an optimization of spatial gradients of oxygen and nutrients. The logic of spatial arrangement also governs patterns beyond the purely physical. In consciousness and thought, we often think in metaphors of space. An idea can feel close or far. A concept can be central or peripheral. An argument can be circular or linear. This is our mind using the intuitive grammar of the spatial tower to organize abstract information. The distance between ideas is a kind of cognitive gradient. Mental models can be seen as shapes. A robust understanding forms a coherent shape where different facts connect smoothly, with low cognitive curvature. Confusion feels like a jagged, discontinuous landscape where ideas do not connect, a region of high and abrupt derivatives. In society and history, cities and infrastructure illustrate the tower's logic. The grid of New York, with low curvature and simple gradients, contrasts with the organic, winding streets of an old European city, with complex curvature. Each reflects a different sentence in the spatial language of social organization. Social networks also have shapes. A centralized network, like a star network, has high convergence, while a decentralized mesh has more uniform gradients. This spatial structure of connection dictates how information, disease, or innovation spread. Borders and territories show the same ideas. A smooth, agreed-upon border is a region of low gradient, while a contested, jagged frontier is a region of high, unstable spatial derivatives of control. Conflict often exists in regions of high social and political curvature. In economics, supply chains are global spatial networks with gradients of cost, time, and resource flow. Disruptions, like a blocked canal, create extreme local curvature in this network, causing shock waves. Wealth and resource distribution can be mapped as spatial fields. Extreme inequality appears as steep gradients and sharp divides between rich and poor areas, like cliffs in a height map. Policies often aim to smooth these gradients. In knowledge and language, taxonomies and categories are spatial structures in information space. The classification of life, for example, is a tree-like shape. A clear category has well-defined boundaries, sharp gradients, while fuzzy concepts live in regions of low gradient and ambiguous boundaries. A well-structured argument or story has a clear shape, with an introduction that establishes the landscape, a development that traverses gradients of tension, a climax at a point of maximum curvature or focus, and a resolution that smooths out the derivatives. We feel unsatisfied by a story with no shape, one that is flat or meanders without purpose. In every case, we are not relying on loose metaphors. We are observing that the logical structure of relationship, adjacency, boundary, and form, encoded in the Holophase language as spatial derivatives, applies universally. The mind, society, and economy literally instantiate these abstract spatial relationships in their functional organization. Now you can begin to read the spatial tower in the world. When you look at landscapes, do not just see a mountain. See its gradient, its steepness. See its curvature, the rounded summit versus a jagged peak. See the roughness of its surface, the high-order derivatives. You are reading the spatial tower's description of the land. When you observe a crowd, the density of people is a field. Where are the gradients, the tight packing near a stage? Where is the flow, the directed gradient? The shape of the crowd's movement is a live demonstration of spatial derivatives in motion. When you analyze a painting, remember that great artists are intuitive masters of this tower. They guide your eye with gradients of light and color, create focus with curvature of lines leading to a point, and shape the texture of a sky or a field using controlled, high-order spatial variation. When you feel your own body, you can sense the curve of your spine, the gradient of tension in a sore muscle, and the intricate topology and texture of your fingerprint. Your physical form is a walking manifestation of the Spatial Tower's principles. A simple practice is to spend 5 minutes looking at a tree. Ignore the labeled tree. See it as a spatial pattern. Trace the gradient from thick trunk to thin twig. See the curvature of each branch. Notice the fractal roughness of the bark and the repetition of leaf patterns. You are directly perceiving the Spatial Tower's output. You are learning that space is not an empty container. It is a structured, hierarchical, infinitely nuanced dimension of relationship. And you now have the language to describe its geometry. And so, we return to phi and the complete tree. This infinite tower of form, this grammar of arrangement, is just another echo of phi. Every curl, every gradient, every sharp edge described by its floors is a specific configuration of phi's single cyclic movement, filtered through the lens of space. With this climb, we have erected the second pillar of our understanding. The temporal tower and the spatial tower now stand together, rooted in phi, supporting the entire edifice of the Holophase language. We see the beautiful duality, one for rhythm, one for form, one for story, one for stage. This is the heart of Episode 7's mission, to build the complete picture. We are not just listing parts, we are revealing the architecture. With these two towers understood, we are ready for the next crucial step, exploring the mixed tower, where these two infinite grammars intertwine to write the epic poems of propagation, interaction, and dynamic reality. As we conclude our ascent of the spatial tower, let us look out from this new vantage point. We have seen that space is not a blank slate. It is a living, breathing, textured dimension with an infinite grammar of shape. From the smooth orbit of a planet to the jagged edge of a crystal, from the branching of a river to the folding of a protein, from the layout of a city to the structure of an argument, all are volumes in the infinite library of this tower, written in the same script of derivatives. This tower is the library of Gaia and Cosmos. On its lower shelves are the simple, elegant forms, spheres, planes, waves. On its middle shelves are the functional shapes of life and technology, wings, wheels, hearts, hubs. On its highest, endless shelves reside the unique, the complex, the barely classifiable forms. The pattern of lichen on a specific stone, the exact neural connectome of a human brain, the moment-by-moment shape of a cloud. All of it, from the most universal to the most particular, is structure in space. And all of that structure is described by the Holophase language's spatial tower. In our next part, we will enter the space between the pillars. We will explore the mixed tower, infinite space-time nuance, where time and space cease to be separate voices and begin their entangled duet. We will learn to read the stories of things that travel, transform, and interact. But for now, stand here, in this tower of form. Look at your own hand. See the gradients of skin tone, the curvature of the knuckles, the intricate lines. You are not just in space. You are a walking, talking embodiment of the spatial tower itself. A complex, beautiful pattern of arrangement, written in the derivatives of one field, standing in the world. Peace be upon you, until part 20.